deepest fathom Aegir waits, the giant of the ocean, oldest tide, his hull lit by the gold of wreck ships' gates, where drowned men feast at his enormous side. His wife ran cast her net across the wave. She gathers those the sea has chosen well. She brings them to the husband's golden cave, where meat flows warm inside the ocean swell. Aegir feasts the drowned in golden hall. The sea has its own Valhalla for all. The gods themselves would feast with him in time. They'd come below the waves as honored guests. They'd drink his mead and hear his brewing rhyme, and share the stories of their separate tests. He brewed the finest mead of all the nine, from the great cauldron mile deep in its size, that Hymir owned and Thor took by design, so Aegir's brewing could appease the cries. The ocean brewer makes the finest mead, from depth and salt and what the drowned have freed. His daughters are the 9 great waves that roll, each one a different mood of open sea. The gentle swell, the storm wave, the cold shoal, the breaker and the deep sea's mystery. We name them as we learn to know their face, each wave a daughter with her own design, each mood the ocean wore in any place, was Aegir's daughter in her swimming line. The 9 wave daughters teach the sailor's art, for knowing them by name is knowing their heart. Before the voyage we poured gold into the harbor water for the giant's wife, a piece of silver or a ring or two to buy her Anne's mercy through the sailing life. For Anne collected what the sea gave up, and those with gold in hand were better kept inside her net and offered Aegir's cup than those without, who in the darkness wept. Carry gold to Ran before you sail. Her net is kinder to the ones who hail. The ocean is not empty, dark and void. It is a kingdom older than the gods, its ruler by no earthly power destroyed, its halls beyond all mortal periods odds. We sail upon the ceiling of his hall. We cast our anchors into his domain. We take his fish and brave his daughter's call, and ask his wife to spare us from her chain. The sea has its own kingdom and its king, and we are guests upon its offering. The amber came from shores the Baltic gave, in pieces golden brown and burnt sienna, each lump a prisoner of an older grave, of trees that drowned before the world had tenor. He held each piece against the winter light, and read what lay inside the frozen gold. The insect stopped in flight, the bubble bright, the crack that ran through something very old. The amber carver reads what resin kept, the ancient world that into gold has crept. His knife was thin as ice against the gem. He worked in hours what others did in days. Each cut revealed the shape already in them, already hidden in the amber's haze. He said he never carved what wasn't there. He only cleared away the outside rough, to find the form that amber chose to wear. Beneath the surface where the light was tough, the amber carver finds what amber hides, the form within the form that time provides. A flying horse he made for the Jarl's daughter, from a piece of amber red as evening fire. He worked for 20 days as if he'd caught her vision in the stone. Before she could require, she held it to the sun and watched the light move through the horse as if the horse would fly. The amber wings translucent in the bright, the ancient resin glowing amber high. The amber horse catches sunlight in its wings and gives the owner what the sun brings. The amber knew the insect it held inside, a spider caught in motion at its kill. 10 million years of preservation's pride in Yellowstone, and standing perfectly still, he carved around it so the spider showed a window in the amber to the past. The creature in its ancient episode of hunting frozen, made forever last. The amber holds the past inside its glow, 10 million years ago preserved in flow. The amber carver knows what all should know, that every material contains a form, that what we make is finding, not bestow. the hidden shape beneath the surface norm. The wood already holds the finished hull. The iron holds the blade within the ore. The amber holds the horse before the pull. Of knife has cleared away the outer moor. The carver finds what waits inside the raw, and gives it to the world without a flaw. They say there is a road the dead walk back, on the night between the living and the gone. A path that cuts across the winter black, that only those between the worlds walk on. The living feel it as a coldness near, a shift in the familiar room or lane. The dog that barks at nothing, false the fear. The candle flame that bends without a pain. The ghost road crosses through the living world, its path through every village, lane and curl. Old Astrid said she saw them every year, at the turning of the autumn into dark. A procession passing slow and clear, that left no footprint and no lasting mark. She said they looked like us but slightly wrong. The color of the edges indistinct. They moved as if they still belong, but in a world from ours forever linked. The dead walk home the way they always walked. The same old roads where once the living talked. Crossroads open on those nights. We did not stand in the familiar paths. We moved aside and left the ancient rites of passage to the dead without our laughs. We set a meal outside the longhouse door, the same foods those who lived with us had loved. We said the names we'd said 100 more times when the living asked to be addressed. The dead need only what they always needed, the name spoken and the meal completed. The ghost road in the fall, 2 years after his death upon the sea. I felt him in the hall at evening's call, the particular weight of how he used to be. I did not speak or turn, but held myself inside the stillness that the moment asked, and felt him move past the familiar shelf of tools and cups and everything he tasked. The ghost road father walks the same old way. Through every room he walked in his own day. The ghost road is not frightening if you know that those who walk it love the same as you, that they are passing through the world below, their own and yours, together, old and new. Leave the crossroads, clear the meal outside, speak the names and let the moment be. For those who walk the ghost road still abide in the places they were happiest and free. The ghost road passes through the hearts of those who keep the door unlocked when autumn blows. He had no instruments beyond his mind, no astrolabe, no compass, not a chart. But he could calculate and always find the position of the ship with only art. The speed of current multiplied by time, the angle of the wind against the sail, the deviation from the solar climb, all computed in his mind without fail. The cold mathematics of the sea is a language of absolute certainty. He counted oar strokes to measure the mile. He used a mark stick for the sun's position. He timed the star eyes with a careful dial, of finger widths above the clear horizon. The other helmsman trusted feel and taste, the smell of current and the wave's own voice. He used them too, but never let them waste the numbers that confirmed the instinct's choice. The calculating helmsman knows two truths: the body's wisdom and the numbers proves. When fog came down and every sense was lost, he fell back on the mathematics pure. He calculated at enormous cost of concentration through the gray obscure. The others prayed and some of them despaired. He counted, calculated, held his course. He spoke the numbers to himself and dared to trust the cold arithmetic of force. The fog makes prayer of those who have no math, and math is prayer for those who know the path. He taught the children numbers on the beach, not as abstraction but as living tool. He said the sea will always be in reach of those who understand the ruler's rule. stars and learn their angles right. Measure the speed of water at the prow. Calculate the distance through the night, and you will always know exactly how. The helmsman who teaches numbers teaches life. The cold mathematics cuts through all the strife. When he was gone, they found his logbook full of figures, calculations, positions marked. Each voyage charted with a scholar's pull of reason through the sea, however dark. They used his numbers for 100 years, his calculations guiding later ships, his mathematics outlasting all his fears, his numbers on the tongue of sailing lips. The mathematician sails past his own death. His numbers carry on beyond his breath. We found him on the island, small and thin, a man of cloth who'd come to find his God. He looked at us with something from within that wasn't fear, but wasn't in the nod. He offered us his bread and bitter herbs. He sat with us and listened to our speech. He did not run or hide behind his words, but sat exactly at the arm's own reach. The hermit monk meets Vikings without fear, for what he serves is larger than the spear. We could not take a man who had so little, whose wealth was bread and prayer and morning cold, whose life was stripped to something at the brittle edge of what a body can withhold. He spoke a language none of us could parse, but meaning crossed the water of the tongue. He pointed to the sky and spread his arms, and something in the gesture reached us young. The hermit speaks the language underneath, the one that lives below all human speech. We traded what we had for what he knew, his knowledge of the healing plants around, his understanding of the sky's clear view, his way of sitting still without a sound. He was a kind of vulva in his way, a seeker of the thing behind the scene, a man who'd stripped his life to find the say of something underneath the human scream. The hermit and the shaman and seek one thing, the voice beneath the noise that all gods sing. We left him on his island when we sailed, a pouch of dried fish pressed into his hand. He blessed us in his tongue before we hailed the anchor up and turned back toward land. His God and ours perhaps looked at each other across the water from their separate heights, and recognized in one another's other the same enormous question of the nights. The hermit's God and Odin share the search for what gives light to every sacred perch. I think of him sometimes on the island still, his small fire visible from the passing ship, a single point of light against the hill of darkness that surrounds the human grip. He chose the solitude and chose it fully, the way a Viking chooses open sea. The same essential courage expressed duly in a different kind of absolute free. The hermit and the Viking both sail out into the vast without a single doubt. They say he does not truly die but sleeps beneath the oldest mountain of the north. His shield upon his arm, his sword he keeps across his lap until the world calls forth. The raven circles still above the peak, two black shapes wheeling in the winter gray, as if they watch for what the mountains deep interior holds against the coming day. The sleeping king waits under stone and root for the hour when his people need his boot. 3 times a century a wanderer has found the passage to the inner hall, has stood before the king of ancient stir, and felt the weight of ages in the sprawl. The king sleeps in his chair of carved black stone, his beard grown through the table and the floor, his breathing barely moving low and prone, but breathing still as it has always more. The sleeping king breathes slow for centuries, but each breath holds the weight of his story. The wanderer who woke him at the wrong, and less a moment found he not rise. The king's eyes opened and his voice was strong. The time is not yet, go back under skies. He said, when you hear the ravens call and every bird in heaven falls to earth, when the ocean rises past the hull of any hope, then I will show my worth. The sleeping king knows when the time is right. He sleeps through the wrong and wakes for the right fight. We carry the sleeping king inside ourselves, the part of us that waits for the true hour, that does not leap from off the dusty shelves at every small provocation's power. The sleeping king is patience beyond patience, the willingness to remain in the stone until the moment asked for ancient patience that only he who has waited long has known. The sleeping king is not the coward's choice, it is the deepest kind of warrior's voice. One day when all seems lost, when the world has reached its lowest, darkest place, and prove that what endures beneath the frost is always greater than the surface's grace. Until that day he sleeps beneath the stone, his raven circling in the winter sky, his sword across his lap, his table throne, his hall below the mountain waiting by. The sleeping king will rise when he is needed. His patience is the promise to be heeded. Every threshold has its price to cross. The door of the great hall, the harbor mouth, the moment between gain and what is lost, the passage from the north toward the south. Some passages are paid in silver bright, some in service and some in the year, some in blood and some in sleepless night, some in letting go what you hold dear. The price of passage is the crossing's worth, what you give to move forward on the earth. The Jarl's Hall asked a gift before you sat. The bride price opened the threshold of her home. The tide demanded something more than that. The ocean asked your fear before the foam. Each threshold has its currency and name. Each crossing has its asking and its due. The fool who thinks all passage is the same finds the world closed on the other side to view. Know what each threshold asks before you step, or find yourself refuse the passage kept. The hardest price I ever paid was trust. a currency that once spent cannot return. I gave it to the passage that I must, and crossed into a life I had to earn. The hall I entered when I paid in trust was worth the price beyond all silver's weight. But trust once spent becomes a vital must, of tending or it rust behind the gate. The price of passage in trust is the hardest, for trust spent wrong leaves you the most discarded. Some thresholds cannot be crossed twice the same. The passage of the first child's birth is once, the passage of a parent's death and name. The crossing into elder is no stunts. These one-way passages deserve a pause before the crossing, after and during all. For what they ask is not a simple cause, but the transformation past the hall. The one-way threshold lasts your whole self through, and you emerge as something wholly new. Stand at the threshold of your next great crossing, and feel what it is asking in your chest. Do not rush the payment and the tossing of what you carry into the new test. Take your time to know the price precisely, to understand what passage will demand. Then pay it fully, completely, nicely, and cross with everything you understand. The price of passage paid with full awareness is the only crossing worth its rareness. Inside, the marrow holding what the flesh had left. The last impression of the one who died, still resonating in the calcium's cleft. She held the skull and felt the final day, the morning of the death and what was near. The cold, the pain, the slow and fading gray, and what the dying one had held most dear. The bone reader listens to the calcium song, and hears the dead speak, silent all along. They brought her to the burial mound at dawn, when disputes rose about the ancient dead, when living clans each claimed the right to born descent from who lay in the earthen bed. She knelt inside the chamber, cold and still. She placed her hands on what the centuries kept. She let the old information fill her fingers as the watching villagers wept. The bone reader settles what the living fight by asking those who cannot lie at night. She said the gift was not a thing of magic, but of listening past the ordinary sound, that every life, however brief or tragic, left something of itself in the compound. She trained for years to quiet every thought that interfered with what the bone would say. She cleared herself of everything she brought and let the dead inform the living day. The bone reader empties herself to hear what the long silent dead still whisper clear. The hardest reading was the child's small bone, found in the field where nothing should have been. She held it for an hour alone, and came back changed by what the bone had seen. She did not share the details of that day, but told the village what they needed know, that what had happened had been paid its way by time, and they could let the old grief go. The bone reader carries what she cannot share, the weight of what the dead alone can bear. When she grew old, she taught the ones who came with the right kind of quiet in their eyes. Not everyone who asked could learn the claim of hearing through the calcium's disguise. She said the gift required not a special birth, but the willingness to be completely still, to value silence as the highest worth, and let the dead speak with their ancient will. The bone reader's gift is given to the still, to those who silence every thought until some work is only done in the dark hours, when the village sleeps and the fire's down to coal, when silence gives the craftsman his full powers, and nothing interrupts the making whole. He rises in the middle of the cold night. He feeds the forge with charcoal black and slow. He works by ember light and not by daylight, for some things need the dark in which to grow. The night forge makes what daylight can afford. The blade that carries something past the norm. The iron speaks more clearly in the silence, when he can hear the metal's changing tone, the ringing of the hammer's night reliance on sound alone to guide the hammer's bone. By day the noise of village fills the air, the children and the animals and talk. The smith must filter what he needs from there, but night gives everything in the pure chalk. The night smith hears what day conceals with sound. The voice of iron in the quiet found. The blade he made that winter midnight long was different from the others in his forge. It held a balance past what he called strong, a weightlessness that opened like a gorge. He could not name what night had given it, that daylight work had never found before. Perhaps the cold, the silence, or the lit interior of him that night unlocked the door. The night blade carries something of the dark, an edge that carries midnight's own bright spark. The village wondered at the pre-dawn smoke that rose from his forge chimney in the cold. Some thought the night work something that bespoke of magic darker than the stories told. He laughed and said the only magic was the absence of distraction and the still, that any craftsman given room and cost could find the same in night's cooperate will. The night forge's magic is attention clear. The craft is stilled when only it is here. Work sometimes in the middle of your night, when all the usual noise has gone to rest, when you and what you make are both in light of the cold forge fire at its very best. The work of midnight is a different grade from the work of the approved and public day. It is the thing that only you have made in the honest dark before the dawn's display. The night forge is where the true work waits, behind the closed and silent daytime gates. It blazed across the sky in green and white, a burning line from north to southern shore. It lit the midnight into something right, beyond the northern lights we'd known before. The children woke and pressed their faces cold against the smoke hole to the sky above. The elders said what falling stars have told in every age, that something comes from love. The falling star arrives without its warning, a burning gift between the night and morning. We found the crater, 3 days walking land, a circle blasted in the birchwood trees, the earth still warm beneath our probing hand, the air still singing with its histories. The iron at the center was like nothing we'd worked or traded or had ever seen, more dense than any earthly metals bluffing, more dark and strange than any iron we'd been. The star iron is the sky made touchable, the unreachable at last approachable. The smith who worked it said his hammers rang differently against the starborn ore, that each blow sent a note the anvil sang, in frequencies he'd never struck before. He made 2 blades from what the sky had sent, each one distinctly heavier and bright, each one a thing of absolute intent, that caught and held a strange unearthly light. The sky iron blade carries something old, a piece of heaven in its core of cold. The blade I carry came from that same fall, 3 generations back the crater found. 3 generations of our family's home have fought with what the heavens left on ground. I feel it's sometimes heavier than before, as if remembering what it used to be. The burning light above the frozen shore, the star that chose to fall and become free. The star blade remembers what it once was, the burning freedom of the cosmic cause. When stars fall, look for where they find the earth. Walk to the crater and stand in the rain, for something from beyond our mortal worth has left a piece of the universe's spring. The heavens drop their gifts in fire and crash. They do not arrive as gentle morning dew. The sky's most precious cargo lands in flash and burns the ground before it can renew. The fallen star gives iron to the brave, the sky's own gift dropped in an earthly grave. The first snow falls like whispers from the grave, too light to settle, gone before it lands, a rumor of the winter on its way, that autumn sends ahead with ghostly hands. The second snow is heavier and stays. It covers the last grasses thin and brown. It silences the dog's familiar haze and lays its white permission over town. The north has 50 words for different white, for those who live inside the snow know right. The crust snow carries you till it will not, then swallows you to hip in sudden cold. The powder snow drifts everywhere and got into every crack before the stove was stoked and old. The blue snow of the deep winter night that shimmers in the starlight like a sea. The gray snow of the storm that holds no light, the yellow snow of fall and spring to be. Every snow has its own character, and those who know them live as snow's curator. We read the snow the way the skald reads verse, for what it carried and what it concealed. The trek of fox across the morning's terse white surface said what nighttime had revealed. The deer had passed before the second hour, the wolf behind it not 10 minutes more. The outcome of that drama's final power was written half a mile from our own door. The snow is the North's most honest page. It records the night's events for morning's age. The children knew the safe snow from the deep. The drifts that looked like solid could not hold. The gentle slope that hid the sudden steep. The places where the snow ran over cold. This knowledge kept them living through the years. The intimate geography of white, the landscape of the winter without fears, for those who'd learned to read it in the light. The snow-wise child survives what snow conceals, for northern knowledge reads what white reveals. In spring when all the 50 types lumps of snow collapse into the single sound of thaw. We mourn them slightly as we watch them go, each disappearing into water's law. The blue snow of midwinter, crystal clear, the powder drift that held no weight at all, the crust we skated on without a fear. They all become the same in different fall. The 50 snows return to one gray stream and carry all their differences in dream. He drew the coastlines that no eye had seen. He inked the rivers from a sailor's tale. He filled the blank with forest, cliff and green, and hoped the next man's voyage would not fail. The map was half invention, half a prayer, a conversation with the possible, a guess drawn carefully with artist care, that turned the unimaginable full. The map maker draws courage into space and gives the unknown world a human face. We sailed with maps that contradicted each. The western shore placed north of where it was. The island chain stretched further past the reach of any ship that we had ever known. But the wrong map was better than no map. It told the helmsman someone had been near. It said the space was not an empty gap, but somewhere someone thought they recognized clear. The imperfect map is better than the blank. At least it says that someone dared and sang. The best cartographer I ever knew drew only what he'd personally crossed. He left the edges wide and purely new, for he refused to map what he had not. His map was small, but every line was true. The depth he'd sounded, every rock he'd seen, every current and the wind he knew was marked with the precision of the keen. The honest map is small but wholly real. The honest cartographer earns his seal. Updated maps the way we grew ourselves. With every voyage something new was learned. The coastline shifted on the knowledge shelves as every wrong assumption was returned. The map of 30 years ago was wrong, not for dishonesty but ignorance. And the new map holds a truer song, but waits to be corrected in advance. The map is always wrong and always growing toward a truth it keeps approaching, knowing Your life is also a map you draw each day, with lines of choice and rivers of desire. Some coastlines you have walked and some you say exist because you heard it from a liar. Check your map against the ground you've crossed. Erase the lines that came from someone's dream, and mark with care what cannot be embossed from anything but what your own eyes deem. The cartographer who maps his own life true draws the only map that can be. She had outlived 3 husbands and 2 sons, 2 wars, 1 plague, 1 famine, and 1 flood. She'd seen the village built from primal ones, of timber hauled through ankle-deep spring mud. At 90 she still walked the morning shore, still ground the grain and kept the accounts straight, still knew which child belonged to which before their parents' parents made the chosen gate. The iron grandmother holds what time would lose, the living archive of the village's view. They came to her with every disagreement about the border or the ancient right. She'd settle it with simple, clear completement of what she'd witnessed in the longer light. I was here, she'd say, when that fence was built. I know which family's grandfather swung the post. I saw the handshake that absolved the guilt, and I remember clearer than you boast. The iron grandmother's memory is law, for she has seen what none of them yet saw. She told the old stories without embellishment, the way the skald adds drama and refrain. She told them plain without the nourishment of heroic color in the rain. Your grandfather, she'd say, was scared that day. He almost turned before he held the ground, and that's what made him brave in the true way, for choosing courage through the fear he found. The iron grandmother tells truth unadorned, and truth unadorned is never to be scorned. The young men found her difficult and old, too ready with correction and the fact, too quick to point out what the young were told was not exactly true in the exact. But those who listened learned they had a gift of someone who had stood inside the real, whose memory gave the present world a lift above the comfortable and the ideal. The iron grandmother's gift is accuracy, the stubborn truth of living memory. She died in the autumn of a quiet day, no drama, just the fire burning low. She called the grandchildren to hear her say the things she needed to release and go. She named the ones she loved and what they'd given. She named the ones who'd wronged her and forgave. She said, I have been fortunate and driven, and do not fear. the crossing to the grave. The Iron Grandmother dies as she has lived, with everything accounted and forgiven.
He does not speak it loud or to the sky. He speaks it in the silence of the chest, in the last breath before the battle's cry, in the pause that separates the test. It is not asking for survival's sake, not begging for the mercy of the gods. It is the declaration of the stake he's placed against the battle's longest stars. The Iron Prayer is not a prayer at all. It is the warrior's truth before the fall. He says, I came here knowing what this is. I stand here having chosen this ground. Whatever happens in the battle's bliss, I am already more than I have found. He says, those I love know what they know. The words already spoken, deeds already done. The love expressed before I chose to go is the Iron Prayer beneath the morning sun. The Iron Prayer is what was done before, not what is asked for at the battle's door. He says, if I fall, let the blade be swift. Let what I leave be worth what I have given. Let the living feel the loss as gift of knowing what a life can be when driven. Let the children hear my name and feel the pull of something they cannot explain. The pull toward the honest and the real, the pull away from the comfortable plain. The Iron Prayer asks only for the name to mean something beyond the battle's fame. He says, oh, I am afraid, and that is true. The fear is honest and I hold it close. It keeps me sharp when everything comes through, the way that fear keeps sharpest at its most. I take my fear into the battle's front, not as a weakness, but as a keen blade, the edge that says, this is not a stunt, this is the thing for which I have been made. The Iron Prayer holds fear without the shame and walks it forward into battle's flame. Sounds and the prayer is done. The words dissolve inside the charging roar. The warrior runs toward the rising sun, carrying the Iron Prayer at his core. Not the words themselves, but what they built inside. The steel of having spoken truth before, the clarity of having stepped aside. aside from everything that fear would lock the door. The iron prayer is spoken to no God, but to the self that carries its own rod. They brought him home in pieces barely whole. 3 men who'd witnessed what had been his end. They told her everything and watched her soul absorb the information round the bend. She did not weep before them, not a sound. She thanked them for the telling, fed them well. She put the children with the neighbor's ground, and went inside to sit alone and dwell. The widow's grief is silent before it speaks, and when it speaks, it's siren that it seeks. She took his sword down from above the door, the one he'd carried for 12 raiding years. She held it till she knew its weight and more, till it was not his anymore, but hers. She trained through autumn on the frozen shore, the village watching from a careful distance. They'd seen grief take many forms before, but none with such a focused and cold insistence. The widow's training has no end in sight, until the blade is ready for the right. She found the men responsible that spring, not through magic, but through patience long. She followed every thread and every string of rumor till she found where they belonged. She challenged them by name before their hall. She named the deed and named her husband's blood. She said, step out and answer for the fall of one you killed and left there in the mud. The widow's challenge rang across the land, a woman standing with her husband's hand. The first one laughed and stepped outside to face what he thought would be a woman's gesture. He found instead a fighter in that space, who'd trained for months with singular investure. She was not graceful in the warrior's form, she was not smooth or practiced or refined, but she was absolutely in the storm of something that had left all fear behind. The widow's blade is sharpened by pure grief,
and grief makes sharper than all practice brief. She lived and those who'd wronged her did not last. The thing acknowledged what she'd had to do. The law protected those who'd held the fast of honor for the husband they once knew. She put the sword back up above the door. She went back to the children and the hall. She did not speak of what the spring before had asked of her beyond the breaking wall. The widow's blade goes back above the door. Its work complete, its grief a little more.
The lake lay in the hollow of the hill, so still that sky and water seemed as one. The clouds moved in its surface, bright and chill, as real as those that cross the actual sun. We came to it for what no mirror shows, the true face, not the face we choose to wear. The lake has no agenda, and it knows no flattery, and offers only bare. The mirror lake shows only what is real, and not the self we manufacture and conceal. Old Magnus came the morning after battle, his face still marked with what the day had brought. He knelt beside the water's gentle rattle and looked at what the fighting day had wrought. He said he did not recognize the face that stared back from the cold and honest glass, that something in the battle's grinding space had changed the man who knelt upon the grass. The mirror lake shows battle's inner cost, the face of who you were and who you've lost. The young bride came to it on the morning of her wedding day, when everything was set. She looked into the water for the love she hoped was visible and not regret. She saw a woman ready and afraid, not beautiful in the way the songs describe, but real in the way that only truth has made. The face that no amount of praise has bribed. The mirror lake shows brides their truest face, not adorned but present in its
grace. The child consulted it before the vote on whether to make war or hold the peace. He stared into the surface of the moat and asked the water for the truth's release. The water showed him old and holding still, a man whose wars were finished and were done, who'd earned the right to sit beside the hill and watch the younger ones beneath the sun. The mirror lake shows Jaws their season's end, and where their wisdom should instead be penned. Visit the mirror lake inside your life, the still and honest surface you avoid, the quiet in the middle of the strife, where everything performed is null and void. Stand at the edge and look without the pose, without the story that you tell yourself, without the face you wear for friends and foes, the one you've never put back on the shelf. The mirror lake is the bravest looking glass, for it shows truth before the moment's past.
The child had no name in the world. 9 days of simply being breath and skin. 9 days before the future could be furled around the thing that they were coming in. The father held the child above his head and spoke the name to the sky and fire bright. He called the ancestors who shared the thread and gave the child its identity and right. The naming day gives the child to the world and gives the world to the child unfurled. The name was chosen in the weeks before, from the lineage or the deed or dream, from the quality the parents most adore, or what the birth night's omens seem to deem. Some children bore the names of those who fell, a resurrection of the honored dead. Some bore a hope the parents chose to tell, in the syllables they gave the newborn's head. The name is the parents' gift and prophecy, their hope made into sound and legacy. The gifts came with the name, a silver ring, a drop of mead placed on the infant's tongue, a rune drawn lightly on the forehead's ring, a prayer for the life barely yet begun. The village gathered as they always would, to witness and to add their blessings too. For a name needs witnesses to be understood as real and binding and forever true. The name child belongs to those who heard. The community confirms the gifted word. I received my name before I could remember, but something of the ceremony stayed. The way my name sits warm against December, the way it fits the shape of me was made. My name has carried me through every year, has been the thing I introduce as self, has been the song that makes me present here, the word that takes me off my own deep shelf. The name received before memory began is the oldest gift of being made a man. Speak your name sometimes when you are alone, not from vanity, but from the knowing that someone chose it for you, carved in bone of hope and love and the world's own growing. Your name is a prayer that someone spoke before you understood what prayer could mean, an intention that the naming day awoke into the life you've lived and all you've seen. The name is the first gift and the last, the thread that ties you to the living past. They argued through the winter by the fire, the questions that no sword could answer plain, the ones that built no hall and fed no pyre, but burned inside the skull like something sane. Does fate exist, or do we choose the way? The Norns have cut our thread, or do we cut? Is every dawn inevitable's display, or does our will hold something past the rut? The Viking philosopher asked the fire, what no blade can answer, no raid acquire. Old Raff said the Norns were real and final, that what was spun without our say, that trying to resist was just the spiral of fate expressing its inevitable way. Young Laker said the thread was spun from choices, that what we called the Norns was just the weight of every previous decision's voices, compounding into what we later call our fate. The philosopher's argument has no end, for fate and will forever twist and bend. They argued whether a tree that falls alone in the deep forest makes a sound at all, where the sound needs an ear to be full grown, or lives in the vibration of the fall. This led to whether the world exists entire, when no one stands inside it witnessing, or whether mind and matter share the fire of existence as one encompassing. The Viking philosophy is not gentle. It burns as fierce as any battle's mental. What is the good life? Not the long life merely, for length without the quality is waste. What makes a death worth mourning, missing clearly? What makes a life worth celebrating haste? The brave death, said old Raffen, was the answer. The life spent fully was young Laker's claim. The life of beauty, said the old wax dancer, who carved her gods by firelight in the frame. The good life question has as many answers as there are honest philosophical dancers. Philosophy is not the soft man's work. It takes more courage than the battle swing to face a question and to never shirk its implications and the light they bring. The warrior who fights without the question of what he fights for and what it is worth has missed the deepest possible suggestion that life is asking of each being's birth. The burning question is the bravest fight, the one that keeps the philosopher up all night. Stands where the lightning wants to strike. It offers up the highest point it has. It says to storm, come here, I am your like. It takes the blow and does not break the glass. We built with oak because it bore the weight of Holland ship and bridge and battle's frame, because the wood that dares to meet its fate is stronger in the grain for every flame. The oak is the wood that faces the storm and grows more dense for keeping itself warm. In its way of being, it bends before the gale without the break. It reads the wind and finds the way of freeing itself from what would snap a stiffer stake. The warrior's spear was always ash for cause, the wood that flexed enough to hold the throw, that gave the arm its spring without a pause, and carried iron further than we know. The ash bends what the oak would break against. Two different strengths, two different ways they're sensed. Yggdrasil itself was called the Great Ash, the world tree bending through the 9 great worlds, flexible enough to hold without the clash of brittle breaking when the cosmos hurls. An oak world tree would have cracked at the root when Ragnarok sent trembling through its core, but ash endures and keeps its flexible foot and holds the worlds together through the war. The world tree is an ash for good design, for only bending holds along the spine. Together both when to stand unmoved and when to yield, when the moment asked for the iron oath and when the moment asks the bending shield. The warrior who is only oak will break against the enemy who is all ash. The warrior who is only ash will make an easy target for the oak's hard crash. The wise one carries oak and ash within, the still resistance and the yielding spin. Plant an oak beside your hall for the bold, the declaration that you will not move. Plant an ash beside it for the old wisdom of the bending and the groove. Let them grow together through the years. Let children learn from both their different truths. Let storm teach oak to stand despite its fears. Let wind teach ash to bend in softer proofs. The oak and ash together make the strong, the standing and the bending all lifelong. They called her Raven's grief from her first launch, when the rope snapped and the hull hit stone. The omen reader stood along the ranch of shore and shook their heads and walked alone. The captain laughed and called them superstitious fools. He said a ship is timber, pitch and nail, that fate was made by men with iron tools, and not by ravens screaming in the gale. The unlucky ship begins with a naming, and some names carry what they're always claiming. The first voyage out she lost a mast, a sudden squall that took it mid-sea clean. The second voyage came back barely past the harbor mouth, a hole below the mean. The third time 2 men fell into the deep, in weather that should not have cost a life. The crew began to lose their restless sleep and whisper of the ship's own inner strife. The unlucky ship accumulates its dead, until no crew will sail her anymore instead. He loved the ship the way some men love wrong. He heard the warnings but remained unstirred. He said his will was always more than strong. On the fourth voyage she went down entire, a hole that opened in the calm of night, as if the sea itself had a desire to end what should have ended before the light. The captain and the unlucky ship went down. Love of the doomed is how the brave men drown. We tell this not to frighten those who sail, but to say some things carry what they carry. The signs that speak before the winds turn gale are worth a pause before you choose to tarry. The ship that starts with breaking and with grief, that gathers damage like a wound collects, that gives its crew no rest and no relief, may be the ship that fate itself rejects. When the vessel is the problem source, and find another, better, different course. But also know that luck is not a fixed and permanent condition of a thing. Some ships were unlucky till they mixed their timber with a different captain's ring. The new name changes what the old name cursed. The ceremony of the relaunching done, the offerings made against the first, and sometimes the unlucky ship is one. Even the cursed ship can be reclaimed if the right hands hold it and it's renamed. He knew each bend and shallow of the east, the rivers of the great interior land. He'd portaged every waterfall at least a dozen times with nothing but his hand. The river was his road and home and trade. He'd built his hull beside the greatest flow, where 5 tributaries their confluence made, and everything that moved had first to go. The River King controls the artery, the vein through which all commerce has to be. He taxed the passage with a reasonable hand, a piece of every cargo heading south, enough to let the traders understand the value of safe passage from his mouth. In return he cleared the obstacles, the fallen trees and seasonal low banks. He settled the disputes and spectacles of traders who'd have otherwise crossed ranks. The River King earns his toll through service and keeps the artery alive and nervous. Passed through his rivers reach, the silver and the silk from further east, the grain from south that sailed in to teach the northern markets how the harvest feast.
emergence of it all, and watched the world flow past his watching eye. He heard the news before it reached the hall of any jarl beneath the northern sky. The River King knows everything first, for all news travels on the river's thirst. His children learned to swim before they walked. They learned to read the current's mood and speed. They learned the river's language when they talked, and grew to serve whatever passage need. His daughter ran the northern tributary, his son the southern channel to the sea. His youngest held the main with commentary of everything that passed in dignity. The River King's dynasty is water, each child a tributary son and daughter. When drought came and the river shrank to streams, the River King's power shrank alongside. The world does not respect the banker's schemes when nature takes away the banker's tide. He worked alongside those he once had taxed. He dug the channels deeper through the dry. He proved that power wisely exercised is still power when the rivers run low by. The River King who survives the drought and earns more loyalty than gold can buy out.
We found it in the second year of seeking, half swallowed by the forest's patient growth. The longhouse timbers rotting, gently creaking, the hearthstone cold beneath our lifted cloth. Someone had lived here 30 years ago. The runes upon the doorpost said a name. The cooking pot still hung beside the low extinguished fire that had once burned flame. The forgotten village speaks without a voice of those who left, of play, of some hard choice. The garden had gone wild in the decade's growth. The herbs gone native in the meadow wide. The fruit trees bent by years of wind and both. The seasons pressing on their untended side. But still they bore their fruit in autumn's turn. Still gave their harvest to the empty air. Still kept the promise of their yearly earn. For families who were simply no longer there. The garden keeps its faith long after people leave. It fruits for no one, still it will not grieve. We read the runes
bite. It took them one by one through cold and rain, until the last one walked into the night. The last one walked away. We found the track in the frozen soil, preserved by time. One set of footprints heading and not back into the forest at the morning's prime. The last survivor leaves but does not speak. Their footprint is the only word they seek. We held a ceremony for the lost. We spoke each name that runes above the door had held in silence at enormous cost, of those who carved them and would carve no more. We left an offering and cleaned the hearth. We stacked the fallen timber from the roof. We did what those who passed deserve of worth, the acknowledgement of life as living proof. The forgotten village deserves one witness who sees the life it held and speaks its fitness. Empty places have their own deep truth. They speak of what was possible and lost, of lives as full as ours in age and youth, that paid an unrequested final cost. Walk through the empty village of your age. The friendships ended, the love's gone away, and read the runes of every empty page, for what was there before the winter's day. The forgotten village lives in those who find it, in every witness who refuses to unbind it.
She was not married to a sailor man, though many sailors try to make it so. She'd made a different covenant and plan with something older than the men could know. She married the sea itself one summer dawn. She waded in until the current held. She spoke her vows before the breaking horn of a wave, and felt herself completely felled. The salt wife belongs to the sea before all. She answers only to the ocean's call. The sea gave back in the way the sea gives back, not faithfully or tenderly or clear, but abundantly and without the lack.
of what the tide provides throughout the year. She always knew where fish would run that week. She always felt the storm before it came. The drowned could sometimes find her if they seek to send a message back through tide and flame. The salt wife reads the sea as wife to husband, in the private language that they've studied. The other women watched her with the mix of pity and of envy and of awe. They said she'd chosen something hard that tricks the heart into believing less is more. She said, I have a husband never gone, who is here every morning at my door, who sings me to sleep with his oldest song, and fills my table with his endless store. The salt wife's husband never leaves her bed, for the sea surrounds her till the day she's dead. In her old age she grew more salt than skin. The brine had permeated through her years. The silver of her hair that started thin grew thick with what the ocean's love adheres. The sailors claimed she smelled of deep sea cave, that when she passed the nets grew heavy full, that when she blessed a boat before the wave, the crossing would be gentler at the pull. The salt wife blesses what the sea approves, for she knows which petition the sea moves. When she at last returned to what she'd wept, she walked into the water at the tide. She walked until the water closed her head, and joined the husband waiting on inside. The village found her fishing nets laid out, her house unlocked, her fire carefully banked, her boots beside the door without a doubt, her lifetime of the sea bond rightly thanked. The salt wife goes home when the sea calls back, and leaves no widow's grief upon the track. He was not gentle in the way of soft men. He did not use the honeyed word or touch. He taught in the way the sea teaches when it gives no quarter and demands to
his children on the water young, before the fear of drowning had a name. He let the salt and cold be what had stung them into knowing what the sea became. The storm father teaches by immersion deep, and what he gives is what his children keep. His daughter at the age of 7 steered the boat alone through chop while he watched still. He did not reach to help when she had veered. He let her find the correction of her will. She capsized once and came up sputtering. He pulled her in and wrapped her warm and said, "Now you know the water's stuttering. Now you know what you must hold instead." The storm father lets the lesson teach itself. He does not rescue learning from the shelf. His son complained the teaching was too hard, that other fathers told their children well. He answered with a silence in the yard, then took him to the cliff above the swell. He said, "This water does not care for you. It does not love your comfort or your ease. It will kill you if you let it run you through, without the knowledge of its boundaries." The storm father gives the truth without the kind, for kindness without truth leaves children blind. In his old age his children all could sail in weather that would keep most others dock. They laughed in storms that made the others pale. Their confidence in the difficult unlocked. He watched them from the shore with something near to what a heart a man allowed as pride. He saw himself inside their lack of fear and knew the teaching had been justified. The storm father's gift is children of the wave, who fear no water from the cradle to the grave. Every child deserves, too harsh where softness would have served the turn, too quick to test the edge of what preserves the love beneath the lesson hard to learn. But in the thing he loved he was most true. The sea received his best and gave it back in children who could face what oceans do and sail through every storm without the crack. The storm father leaves his mark in those who sail through every kind of weather, storm and gale. split clean in half. The oaken hide divided by one blow. The warriors on the shore began to laugh until they saw my face and felt the low. A broken shield means someone reached your guard. Someone found the weakness in your stance. Someone hit you in the moment hard, when pride had made you miss your second chance. The broken shield is the honest teacher, more truthful than any victory's preacher. I sat with both the halves for 7 days. I turned them in my hands and read the break. I traced the angle through the wood's own haze, and understood exactly my mistake. The blow had come from lower than I watched, a move I hadn't seen or practiced for. My guard had dropped because my pride had notched too high a certainty of what was in store. The broken shield shows where the eye has failed, the angle that the warrior never trailed. I trained the counter for a winter through. I practiced the low guard until it lived, not in my head, but in my body's new reflex that the broken shield had given. The lesson cost a battle in my pride, but bought a skill no victory had sold. The vulnerability exposed inside became the strength I carry in the cold. The broken shield buys what winning never can, the specific knowledge of the fallible man. The old smith shaped the broken halves to use. He bound them back not as a shield but as the iron banded reminder not to lose sight of what the break had shown in jazz. I hung it in the hall above the door, a trophy of my most instructive day, a better teacher than all victories, more that let me pass without a lesson say. The broken shield above the door reminds that the best teacher is what humbles minds. Tell the young your defeats will teach you more than every victory strung along your name. The broken shield shows what you're fighting for more clearly than the uncontested claim. Do not hide the broken shields from view. Do not pretend the breaks have never been, for every split in wood is teaching you the angle that you'd never thought to screen. The broken shield is the warrior's best gift, the honest crack that gives the spirits lift. His hands were never clean, the tanner's son. The smell of hides and oak bark in his skin. The village boys would mock him for the done work of his father's craft and call it sin. But every shield the warriors took to war was strapped with leather from his father's vat. Every saddle, boot and bag and more was born inside the workshop where he sat. The tanner's son makes war and travel possible. His smell is the smell of everything responsible. He learned each hide as if it were a text. The way the oak bark tannin work the skin. The difference between the previous and next. The months of transformation from within. Deer hide for the saddlebag, supple gray socks hide for the shield's demanding face. Seal skin for the boot that seals the space between the foot and water's cold embrace. The tanner reads each hide for its best use, and gives each skin the life it can't refuse. He fought in the shield wall beside the men who'd mocked his smell and traded on his craft. He held the line as well as anyone. The enemy came forward fore and aft, and when a shield strap broke at battle's worst, he pulled his knife and cut a strip to bind from what he always carried for this thirst of knowing leather was the thing to find. The tanner saved the battle with a strip of what no warrior thought to add to kit. The skald who sang the battle's aftermath named the warriors who had held the line. He did not know enough of the skill's path to name the tanner's son among the fine. But those who'd fought beside him knew the truth, that what had held the shield was flank entire, was leather cut by a tanner certain youth, who smelled of oak bark hides and curing fire. The unnamed tanner saved the battle's shield, while glory went to those the songs revealed. Honor every craft that holds the world, the ones that smell and stain and are unseen. The leather worker with his hides unfurled, the dyer with his hands of purple green, the farmhand and the fish got clean as knife, the soap maker and the bone meal spread wide. For every warrior's glory in this life stands on the shoulders
of the young celebrate. The tanner's craft holds every other up. The unnamed worker fills the vital cup.
Imagine all who lived before you seated along a table stretching past all sight. Every ancestor who breathed and greeted this same cold air beneath this same night. The table runs from here into the past. 1,000 years of faces, hands and names, each one a life that mattered while it lasts, each one a player in the same old game. The long table holds the living and the dead, all seated at the same long board and fed. The woman who survived the Great Plague year sits 3 seats to the left of where you are. The man who crossed the ocean without fear sits somewhere to the right beneath a star. The child who lived when all the others died, the one who chose to stay when others fled, the one who held the village in its pride through 7 years of famine and of dread. Every ancestor at the long table sits and passes you the dish that finally fits. You are the newest seated at the board, the one whose portion is still being served, who has not yet decided what is stored in the legacy that will be preserved. The ones beside you leaning close to hear what you will add to what they left behind. They are not judging, only holding near the curiosity of the ancestors' mind. The long table waits to see what you will give, the dish you add to how the living live. And further on ahead beyond your seat, the table stretches into the unborn, the ones who'll come long after your complete life has been lived and put away and worn. They sit in seats that haven't been set yet, with names that haven't been given to the air. They wait for what this generation set of lives will leave them despair or repair. The long table stretches past your life to where your choices sharpen or make strife. So eat well at the long table tonight. Take what you need and leave enough for all. Speak the names of those who sit in light and those who sit in shadow at the wall. Add something to the table that is yours, a truth, a craft, a kindness, or a song.
leave the board better than your own before, for those who come to sit here all life long. The long table is the only feast that lasts, where every living and dead person casts.
The giant Thrym had stolen Thor's great hammer. He hid it 8 miles deep beneath the earth, and sent his ransom wrapped in honeyed clamor. Bring Freya as my bride and prove your worth. The gods convened in panic and in shame, for without Mjolnir giants walk the land, and Loki with his scheming tongue of flame devised a plan that no one else had planned. The trickster dresses Thor as Thrym's new bride, and hides the thunder god in female pride. They veiled the red-bearded god in linen white. They hung the keys of marriage at his waist. They tuck the bridal jewels out of sight of any eye that looked too long or traced. Loki dressed himself as bridesmaid fine, and both rode east in the goat-drawn chariot bright. The mountains cracked along the thunder line, as Thor rode furious into giant night. 2 gods in bride's dress riding to the feast, the most undignified war against the beast. At Thrym's great hall the feast was set and grand. The giant groom reached out to lift the veil, but Loki caught his eager reaching hand, and spun a story quick enough to sail. My lady has not eaten 8 long days, so eager was she for this blessed night. Her eyes are red from weeping love-struck haze. Her hunger is her love-made appetite. The trickster's tongue saves what no sword could save, the lie that buys the time before the grave. When Thrym brought the hammer to the wedding bed to bless the bride according to the rites, Thor's hand was on the handle where it led. Before the giant understood the night, the veil came off, the dress fell to the floor. The red-beard caught the torchlight as he rose, Mjolnir swinging wider than before, and Thrym's hall became the end he chose. Thor revealed brings more terror than disguised. The enemy's last sight is Thor's eyes. We tell the story not with shame for Thor, who wore the dress
to save the world's defense, but with the laughter that the gods adore, at pride that bends without the loss of sense. For what is braver than the warrior who will do the undignified to win the right, who sets aside his pride when the moment true demands the unexpected in the fight? The thunder bright as Thor at his most brave, he wore the dress that kept the world from grave.
The sky above the north is its own ocean, as deep and wide and full of life as any. Its waves are clouds in constant tidal motion, its storms as sudden and as fierce as many. The sailor who has crossed the water's face has only crossed the lower of the two. The upper sea is waiting in its space for those who learn to sail the sky's deep blue. The second sea is older than the first, for sky was here before the ocean's thirst. The birds are sailors of the upper road, the geese that know the southern harbors well, the ravens carrying their Odin load of information through the upper swell. We learn to read the sky, see from the birds the way they rode the wind or fought the gale. Their flight path spoken better words than words about the weather building past the veil. The bird is the sky sailor's first teacher, a creature of the upper sea's deep feature. On still nights when the stars came low and clear, I felt the sky press down with all its weight, the vastness of the upper ocean near enough to make the lower seem a plate. The sea I sailed was shallow beyond measure, against the depth of what was above my head. A puddle holding my ship's wooden treasure, beside the ocean stretching to the dead. The sky humbles every sailor of the wave, for the upper sea goes deeper past all grave. The gods who sailed the sky did so on ships made not from oak but from the light itself. They navigated by the night fixed clips of starlight fixed upon the cosmic shelf. Skidbladnir was the ship of sky and foam that could be folded small enough to pocket, that spread its sail against the cosmic cold and carried gods past every starlit socket. The sky ship sails what no water ship can reach. The upper ocean past all mortal speech. Look up more often from the lower sea, and remember the enormous ocean there, that every storm that hits you comes down free from the second sea of cloud and air. The sailor who knows both his seas is wise, who reads the water and the sky as one, who feels the upper ocean in the rise of pressure before storms have yet begun. The second sea is where the gods sail past, and all our weather comes from it to last. The sound of stone on iron in the dark, before the battle's dawn has showed its face. Each stroke a small and rhythmic sparking mark that fills the pre-dawn air with metal's grace. The whetstone is the warrior's meditation, the preparation deeper than the prayer, the focusing of full concentration on the single task beyond compare. The whetstone song is iron answering stone, the readying of the self alone, alone. He learned the angle from his father's hand. Too steep and you remove too much in haste, too shallow and the edge will never stand against the armors pushing back in paste. The perfect angle is the patient finding the feel against the stone that says yes here. The resistance giving way without the grinding that tells you that the edge is true and clear. The whetstone teaches patience to the blade, and patience is the finest edge that's made. Some sharp and fast and furious before the charge, the stones creeping loud and obvious in air. Some
sharp and slow with something very large and private in the quality of care. The slow stone warrior came to battle ready at a depth that fast stone never could achieve. His edge was true, his concentration steady. His mind it used the whetstone to believe. The warrior who sharpens slow fights sharp, for mind and blade are tuned on the same heart. Listen to the stone that iron speaks, its readiness in tone, that when the pitch is right, you'll always know the blade has found the sharpness of the bone. A high and singing note against the stone means the angle's right and edges forming. A low and grinding sound means you have sown the seeds of an edge that needs more forming. The whetstone sings when sharpening is true. The iron finds its voice in what you do. Carry your whetstone everywhere you go, not just for the blade, but for the mind. For every skill grows dull with time's slow flow, and needs the patient stone to sharpen blind. The mind unhoned grows soft against the task. The craft unpracticed loses its fine edge. The question not yet asked remains to ask. The whetstone is the daily thinking pledge. The whetstone song is sung by those who grow, who sharpen what they have through daily flow.